Let's picture a day of, well, intense intellectual combat. It's a Tuesday during Holy Week, and Jesus is facing down a series of questions that are not just questions, they're traps. In this explainer, we're going to dive into how these traps actually became a doorway to a much deeper truth, a truth about the human heart. So here's our game plan. We'll start by setting the scene on this tense day of questions. Then we'll break down the traps, these clever questions about earthly power. After that, we'll get to the heart of the law and see how that points to something bigger, rebuilding the true temple, the one inside us. And we'll wrap it all up with what this means for us today, an invitation to heal. Okay, so let's get right into the scene. It's Tuesday of Holy Week. Jesus has just made his triumphant entry into Jerusalem and, cleansed the temple of all the money changers. Now he's teaching, but you can just feel the tension in the air. The very people whose authority and business he just disrupted, yeah, they're coming for him. And it's so important to get this right. When Jesus cleared out the temple, his goal wasn't just to judge everyone. It was about purification. In his eyes, a single human soul was infinitely more precious than any business deal. He came to mend what was broken and corrupt, not to just tear it all down. But of course, this act of purification was seen as a straight-up attack. The chief priests, the scribes, the elders, they weren't interested in being purified. So they started plotting. This quote from the prophet Jeremiah just captures their whole mindset perfectly. They decided to hunt for his words, to literally attack him with the tongue and trap him. This wasn't a friendly debate. It was a planned ambush. Now, there were three main groups that teamed up against him. First up, you have the Pharisees. You can think of them as the really dedicated teachers of religious law. They were experts in the entire Hebrew scripture and were all about following traditions, down to the smallest detail. Then you had the Sadducees. These guys were a powerful bunch from high priestly families. And here's the detail you have to remember about them. They only accepted the first 5 books of the Bible, the books of Moses, and they flat out denied that there was any resurrection of the dead. Just tuck that away, because it is the key to their trap. And finally, we have the scribes. These were the lawyers of their day, the absolute experts in Mosaic law. Their whole job was to interpret it and teach it. So when a scribe asks you a question, you know it's going to be a tricky, technical, legal challenge. All right, so now let's watch these groups put their plans into action. They set up 2 huge traps for Jesus, one mixing politics and the other theology, and they were both designed to catch him in his own words. The first trap is all about politics, and it's set by the Pharisees and the Herodians, who were basically supporters of Roman rule. The question is just brilliant in how nasty it is. If Jesus says, yes, you should pay the tax, he looks like a traitor to his own people who hated the Roman occupation. But if he says, no, don't pay it, boom, they can immediately report him to the Romans for treason. It's a total no-win situation. Or so they think. And Jesus just completely dismantles their trap. He asks for a coin, points to the face on it, Caesar's image, and delivers this absolutely profound line of wisdom. He's saying, sure, give Caesar what belongs to him, but he's also reminding them of a much higher duty. That image on the coin is Caesar's, but the image of God, that's imprinted on every human soul, and that belongs to God. So with the Pharisees totally silenced, the Sadducees step up. They lay out this really complicated story problem. A woman marries a man, he dies. She marries his brother, he dies. And so on for 7 brothers, just like the law said to do. Then she dies. So they ask, in the resurrection, which, remember, they don't even believe in, whose wife is she going to be? They think they found this perfect logical puzzle that proves the whole idea of resurrection is just absurd. But Jesus' answer just completely shifts the playing field. He tells them their whole mistake is that they're thinking on this purely earthly, literal level. They're trying to apply the rules of this world to a spiritual reality that's way beyond them. He reveals that in the resurrection, our relationships are totally transformed. We become like the angels in heaven. And then he delivers the knockout punch, and he uses the very scriptures the Sadducees claim to follow. He quotes from the book of Exodus, where God says, I am the God of Abraham, not I was. He uses the present tense. Jesus shows them that if God is still their God right now, then Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob must still be alive. He proves the resurrection using their own sacred text, and the crowd is just blown away. So, the political trap failed, the theological trap failed, but they're not done yet. Now comes the final challenge, and this time it's from a scribe, a lawyer. And the question moves away from government and the afterlife and goes right to the very heart of their entire legal and religious system. To really feel the weight of this next question, you have to know this number. The rabbis had gone through the law of Moses and carefully identified 613 separate commandments. So to ask which one of those is the first or the greatest, that is a massive test of wisdom. And here's the trap in this one. If Jesus picks one commandment and raises it above the others, he could be accused of dismissing the other 612. It's a challenge to try and rank God's own laws. And whatever he says could be twisted to make him look like he's just picking and choosing which parts of Scripture he likes. So what does he do? Instead of picking one commandment out of 613, Jesus gives them the two foundational pillars that hold the whole thing up. First, love God with everything you've got. And second, which flows from the first, love your neighbor as yourself. He tells them the entire law, all 613 commandments, and all the prophets, it all hangs on these two principles. He didn't just answer the question, he revealed the very soul of the law. And this brings us to the real core lesson of this entire day. After he silenced all of his critics, Jesus finally reveals what he's truly focused on. And it's not the stone temple they're all standing in, it's the temple of the human heart. You see, all these arguments about taxes and resurrection and technical points of the law, they were all superficial to him. The real work, the whole reason he cleansed the physical temple in the first place, was to show what he wants to do inside of us. He saw that the temple of the human heart had become cluttered, a place of pride and ego and jealousy and just plain brokenness. And this really shows the kind of transformation he's after. He wants to come in and knock down the temple of pride we've built for ourselves, the walls of jealousy and loneliness. Now, that process might feel a little painful, but he's not just there to patch a few holes. He's building something brand new, a palace where God himself can live. He wants to take our brokenness and make our souls whole and purified. So this whole day of questions, it's not just some story from history. It's a timeless invitation. It's a call for us to stop defending all the broken structures inside of us, and instead to invite the master builder to come on in and heal and purify and completely transform us. And this really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? It's a prayer of surrender. It's about finally admitting that we can't fix ourselves. It's this recognition that if we are just willing to bring all of our broken pieces, our pride, our failures, our loneliness, and give them to him, he can actually create something beautiful and good out of the mess. This prayer from Psalm 139 is just the perfect summary of this whole lesson. It's an open invitation for God to come into the temple of our heart, to search its deepest corners, find the stuff that needs to be cleaned out, and then lead us on a path of true everlasting life. It's the very thing Jesus was offering them back then, and it's what he's still offering us right now. So after walking through this incredible day of questions and traps and divine wisdom, the final question isn't for him, it's for us. Looking at the temple of your own heart, what walls of pride, what areas of brokenness are you finally willing to let him tear down so he can build his palace inside of you?